So I've spent the last week building the template for the ultimate smartphone speed test, one that does the best job that you really can to factor in the things that will affect your overall experience, from CPU and GPU speeds to storage speed and software optimization. All phones are set to Full HD+, they've all got plenty of charge, and we've just cleared all apps from the memory. So to start with, boot test. And to be clear, I wouldn't consider this hugely important. It's not really an indicator of general phone performance, but some people like to see it, and it is one metric for measuring software optimization. Regardless, all three phones boot up in almost exactly the same time. There's no notable disparity there. So on to the next thing, which is unlocking, and considering the average person unlocks their phone about 200 times a day, this is quite an important one. So first up, we've got the S10 with its ultrasonic in-display fingerprint scanner, and it's quite a cool one because you barely need to apply any pressure on the display, but you can probably see for yourself there is a little bit of a delay between my finger touching the screen and the phone actually unlocking. Still, 17 seconds to fully unlock 10 times is quite impressive. So now, the iPhone XS Max, which doesn't have a fingerprint scanner, so we're using Face ID, and there's a bit of a trick here. You can actually swipe up to start the unlock process before it's even scanned your face, and that speeds it up. And that turns out even faster than the S10 Plus's ultrasonic in-display fingerprint scanner. Now, the Mate 20 Pro has two highly secure options. You've got an optical in-display fingerprint scanner on the front, and you've got 3D face unlocking. So we'll try each one by one, but to start with, the optical scanner is a little slower than Samsung's. But don't forget, it's also less secure. Now, face unlocking on the Huawei Mate 20 Pro is really fast. It actually performs the operation a little faster than the iPhone, but then combines that with no need to swipe to actually finish the unlock. So you end up with this crazy unlock speed that's barely over 1 second for an entire unlock operation. So I'd say Huawei takes this one. Next up is benchmarks, and I know a lot of people have a bit of a vendetta against them, and it's true, they're not perfectly indicative of day-to-day performance, but benchmarks do measure a lot of important facets that will impact it. They test for a lot of things that we can't pick up just by seeing, for example, which apps load faster. So right now we're on Antutu benchmark, and to try and get a little bit more of a representative reading, we're gonna run it 3 times and take an average result. And that'll also be a pretty good test of how performance sustains over time. And you get quite an interesting result. While the S10 Plus sustains its performance well, both the iPhone and the Mate 20 Pro's Antutu scores fall quite considerably after the first attempt. And the overall average winner is actually the S10 Plus. The second benchmark we're using is Geekbench, and again, I'm going to repeat this, I'm going to do it twice this time and then also take an average. The iPhone is quite a way ahead in this test, and although the Galaxy S10 Plus has the much higher single-core score than the Mate 20 Pro, in terms of multi-core score, Huawei actually overtakes Samsung. But if we take a look at the overall picture here, results from both benchmarks, then it looks like the S10 Plus and the iPhone are at the top when it comes to performance, and the Mate 20 Pro is not too far behind. Storage speed is a lot more important than people give it credit for, and the best way to measure it is to use a tool called Performance Test by Passmark. It reveals a bit of an interesting result, because the S10 Plus was rumoured to be coming with a new standard, Universal Flash Storage 3.0, but actually by quite a long way it has the slowest disk performance speed of all three phones, with the iPhone at the top by a long way, and this might actually help to explain one of the results that we get later on in this test. So, gaming is a little tough to mathematically compare between operating systems, but the experience disparity is quite clear. In all games, Huawei was essentially a little behind, still able to play pretty much every top-tier game, but you'll notice frame drops quite consistently when you're turning around, when you're changing direction, all these sorts of things. I'm actually using the Exynos version of the S10 Plus, which is in most cases considered to be slightly less good than the Snapdragon version, but even then, it pretty much kept up with the iPhone in almost every situation. Even on Ark Survival Evolved, for the most part, it was pretty smooth. But iPhone does take the gaming department, because every now and again the S10 Plus will drop a few frames here or there, which is not a big deal, but the iPhone doesn't really do that. So I've hooked each phone up to a very average internet connection to see if there's any noticeable difference in download speeds or latency in an average household. I'm gonna download 2 files one after the other on each phone and just see which one does it faster. But bear in mind that when you're using anything to do with the internet, there's a lot of factors outside the control of the phone. So even though these three are the only devices I've connected to this network, with everything online, there's just that bit of variability, so it's only worth putting your trust in results that are consistent. So the two files that we're downloading on each phone are labelled 3 and 4, number 3 being about 9.5 megabytes, and number 4 being about 42 megabytes, and thankfully we do get some pretty consistent and quite interesting results. In both of those download tests, the S10 Plus is at the top. It is the fastest to download both files. The iPhone XS Max then finished after that, and the Mate 20 Pro a fairly long way behind. Okay, application load times. We're going to pull up 10 applications one by one and see which phone can load all 10 the fastest. But I want to clarify something here. This is not a test of a phone's CPU performance. This is literally more of a test of a phone's I/O capability. I/O, or input and output, is the process of taking something from your internal storage and being able to move it to the phone's main memory so that it can start tackling it as a task. Regardless though, as long as you bear that in mind, it is still a valid and useful test. You want to know which phone loads apps faster. And it's looking like the Mate 20 Pro is slightly ahead, and it kind of makes sense. App boot times are something that Huawei has seriously focused on with its MUI software. It's one of the primary features of it. And it's also worth bearing in mind that Samsung's One UI has pretty much only just come out of beta, so there is room for that to continue to improve. Regardless, the Mate 20 Pro finishes first, and then about 4 seconds later you've got the iPhone XS Max, and then the S10 Plus finally finishes about 8 seconds after that. Social media is a big one, so to test this we've pulled up the Instagram Explore page, and we're going to refresh each phone 10 times on this, but only refresh the next one once one page has fully loaded. So we'll see which phone can load it 10 times the fastest. And even though, yes, the code of these apps varies between operating systems, this test factors that in. If a phone loads social media apps faster just because it's running one operating system, that doesn't change the fact that it is still loading the apps faster. It's an important result. As before, the Mate 20 Pro finishes fastest, about 10% faster than the S10 Plus, which in itself is about 10% faster than the iPhone XS Max. Okay, this next one isn't really much of a calculated test, but I did just want to see how first-party apps perform on all the phones. And so to do this I pulled up the camera app and I'm flicking between video, photo and portrait mode. Of the three, Huawei's actually seems the most responsive. Both the S10 Plus and the iPhone do have some noticeable lag when you move to portrait mode. It takes it a second just to set itself up. Huawei has a little bit of a delay when you move to video, but it's definitely less than the other phones have with portrait mode. Alright, the final hurdle is multitasking. We're going to go through all the applications that have been open, starting from the most recent, and we're going to see how many of them each phone has managed to keep in memory. This is essentially an indicator of how many things you can do at once on your phone. What tends to happen is when the phone becomes overwhelmed, when you're trying to run loads and loads of things and the phone runs out of RAM, it has to start closing tasks so that it can prioritize the few that are open. So if we fast forward this, you'll be able to see that every single application we opened up in that load time test has remained open, so that's pretty crazy. Safe to say you're getting great multitasking performance on all of them. Alright guys, which phone do you think won? This test has been literally an entire week in the works, so if you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe for more, and also let me know what other tests you'd like to see on future smartphone speed test comparisons. As always, my name is Aaron, this is Mr. Who's the Boss, and I'll catch you in the next one.